This is Viterbi Voices.
Coming to you from the University of Southern California, Viterbi School of Engineering.
We're here to give you the inside scoop on research, classes, student life, and so much more.
All of these shared by students, faculty, alumni, and other members of the USC community.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back. Welcome to Season 10 of Viterbi Voices. That's right. This is the first episode of Season 10 of Viterbi Voices. I, as usual, am one of your co-hosts. My name is Paul Ledesma. I'm the Executive Director of Undergraduate Admission here at the Viterbi School of Engineering. And because it's Season 10 and it's our first episode, we have the premiere episode, the welcome, I don't know what we call it, but the very first episode, the inaugural episode of my new co-host here. Please introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Safi Patel. You might recognize me from last season. I did a few episodes, and I was also on the Pass Down episode with our lovely host last year, Maya. But I'm super excited to be the host this year, and I'm looking forward to what we have in store for this coming year.
Absolutely. Super excited to have you here, Safia. Thank you for being here. And I hope that everybody's going to enjoy your season here. If people have been listening for a while, that was 2 years with Maya, but now we're moving on. We haven't forgotten about her. She's off doing great things. But it is now your year. So this is exciting. What, as you're kicking off this first kind of inaugural episode of our very first recording, right before I hit record, I said the same thing to you, which is like, I have to remember how to do this. I haven't done this in a while. Yeah. What's the first things that come to mind of stuff that you're like excited about, stuff that you're scared about, that you're worried about? What's going through your mind right now as we're doing this?
Yeah, I think one thing that I'm really excited about is just getting a broader audience onto the podcast. I think Maya did a really good job of kind of broadening the kind of topics that we were covering, but I want to push the boundaries with that even more and maybe get some alumni on the podcast, or we already did that, but some of the old hosts maybe. I know we were talking about that, which I'm really excited for.
10-year anniversary episode.
Yes, hopefully we can get a good one going. I'm also hoping to do more in-person recordings. I know I mentioned that in the Pass Down episode, but I think it'd be really cool to go to one of the rooms at school, just set up the mics and have a conversation and see if that kind of helps the dynamic at all. For context, right now we film a lot of the podcasts on Zoom just for sake of ease, and even right now in different states. So obviously to do it on Zoom, but I think it'd be really cool to just sit down, have a conversation, what kind of comes out of it when you have those in-person moments with someone.
I agree. And you alluded to the fact that one of my next questions for you is, it is the beginning of August. You are nowhere near campus because you are somewhere else. Update everybody on how you have spent your summer and what you're currently doing. And today was a kind of a benchmark, kind of monumental day, calendar day for your summer.
I actually ended my internship today. It's 4 p.m. my time, but I ended at about 11 a.m. So I'm officially done with my summer internship. It was an awesome time. I was in New York for this entire summer, and New York has been my dream location for almost 8 years since my sister moved out here. So it was definitely a monumental summer, and it was so exciting. I did so many things that have been on my bucket list for so long, and I obviously learned a lot in my internship too. I feel like I have to say that, but I was on the software team at a financial technology company, and I was working on one of their artificial intelligence / machine learning products. So it was really cool, really insightful, and I'm glad I got that experience.
That's great. Very cool. So you ended it today. You were there for a couple months, I think is what this was.
Yeah, it was about 2.5 months, about 10 weeks. I know a lot of my friends are doing more, like longer ones, are doing 12-week ones, but mine was a little bit of the shorter end. So I'm really sad to leave New York. I wish it was a little bit longer, just because now there's this awkward gap between end of internship and starting of school where I'm just back in LA and I don't know what I'm going to be doing yet. So
but it'll be good to kind of like, kind of get some downtime, resettle yourself, kind of just adjust a little bit. How have you adjusted overall to the New York summer weather?
It has been so incredibly hot. I haven't been able to walk outside. This might be TMI, but I keep my deodorant and like a spray perfume on me at all times because I'm constantly sweating.
Yeah.
Like I mentioned, my sister already moved out here a while ago, and I
Yeah.
was asking her for tips on what to pack, and she said you don't even need to bring a single jacket. I didn't believe her, and I brought three with me.
Why?
Um,
What?
I I I run really cold. I get cold all the time, so I was like, I'll inevitably need one, and I need options.
Yeah,
I'm a
yeah, yeah.
backpacker, so
Okay.
I took way too many clothes with me. But
Yeah.
um, safe to say I didn't use a single one, except once when there's a thunderstorm.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, it was honestly unbearable. So definitely drank a lot of water and kept a bag on me at all times to freshen up. But it was a really good summer.
Awesome. We'll talk a little bit more on our outro of how it all went, but I wanted to get just a quick update from you. And also, the thing we'll talk about on the outro is it is the beginning of August, and just a few days. This episode's coming out on August 4th. For transparency purposes, we're recording this on Friday, August 2nd. And the Common App opened yesterday. So it opened on August 1st. That means it's open and available for students to start looking at it and start working on their application, their undergraduate admission for the application for undergraduate admission. This is how out of practice I am. And it's there for you, commonapp.org, or go to our website, viterbiadmission.usc.edu, to start working on it. Again, no rush, right? Not due till November 1st to be considered for merit-based scholarships when you apply early action, or January 15th is the final deadline. We'll talk a little bit more about that on the outside, but let's dive into the premiere episode topic and guest of today's episode. Today's kind of first episode of season 10. I wanted to make it a special one, and it took us, I think it was good timing to bring him in at this point. But for today, we are bringing you the director of the Engineering and Society program, Professor Steve Bucher. And Steve, technically, his title is Professor of Technical Communication, but he's the director of the Engineering and Society program. Steve is a massively important individual at the Viterbi School. He has led and developed the engineering writing program, which then has become a new entity called the Engineering Society program, of course, based on the ideas of communication as an engineer, and obviously accreditation standards of learning how to communicate, which we'll talk about a little bit in the episode. And then connecting that and being somewhat of the anchor in the Viterbi School's curriculum on how we connect the technical work that a student is doing with its societal impact. And so through the courses, the co-curricular activities, and the other learning opportunities that will blend humanities with an engineering education, the Engineering Society program cultivates engineers to be critical thinkers and responsible professionals. So it's all about the Engineering Society program. We have some long-ranging discussions, some wide-ranging discussions about the ideas of civic responsibilities, which are the social and the philosophical and the moral. And that's all about how an engineer should go about their engineering education, and how not only are we getting the students to think about it, but how they're practically going to implement that inside of their curriculum, starting as early as the first year academy class in the first year and weaving its way through the curriculum through technical design classes. And we also highlight a number of other very specific classes related to philosophy and innovation, related to the ideas of social impact in general, and working to create trustworthy engineers. So when you're going through this, you might hear a couple websites, which I want to make sure we'll put in the show notes here, related to the Illumin magazine, which is illumin.usc.edu, and the Viterbi Conversations in Ethics website, which is vce.usc.edu, because ethics is a big part of this conversation. And there are way more things beyond that. For example, there are a number of different podcasts that students do. There's inside of Viterbi Conversations in Ethics, there's not only a magazine, but a podcast. There's the Engineering Moment podcast. There's a thing that was related to videos on the EIS website, and all of that you can link off to in the Engineering Society website, which is eis.usc.edu. So if you want to click through something while you're going through this, check those resources out to learn a little bit more about Steve Bucher and the Engineering Society program, because these are classes that you will be taking as a student here, focusing on engineering communication, on ethics, and overall the education. So let's hand it on over to Professor Steve Bucher from the Engineering Society program. Welcome. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Paul.
We can call that the official start. So I would love it for everyone to hear from you and have you introduce yourself to everybody else, Mr. Bucher, the director, are we the founding director, or are we? How do you first identify yourself? Something omniscient, omnipotent. Hey, y'all, sorry for the interruption, but I wanted to let you know that we have a number of campus visit programs available to you right now. If you want to check out what campus is like, if you want to learn more about the Viterbi School of Engineering, go to viterbi.link/visit. That's VITERBI.link/visit, where you can learn about our Viterbi visit experiences that happen on most Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. We have some virtual events that happen on occasional weekdays and occasional Saturdays. Plus, we have some transfer virtual admission sessions where you can learn all about how to get those courses ready for transferring. We want to meet you. We will have lots of opportunities to do it, and it's happening all summer long, but get your registration in now at viterbi.link/visit. Hope to see you soon.
My ego allows that, but my business card doesn't, nor does my pay grade. My academic title is Professor of Technical Communication Practice. My administrative title is Director of the Engineering and Society program. And then there's, daddy, husband, that sort of thing too, which I think are more important, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I agree with that. And so you say Professor of Technical Communication? Is that what you said?
That's right. So for many years, we were the engineering writing program, just to give you some background here.
Yeah, I'll start there.
There was an effort in, let's say, the end of near the turn of the century.
The turn of the century. When we moved on from the 1900s.
Back in my day. There was an effort to improve the communication skills of engineering students. The thought was that this is important. This is vital to engineering students and engineering practice. If you look at the criteria for accreditation, communication is always called out as one of them. It's 1 out of 7 is communication skills. So
just to pause you there so that everybody understands what we're talking about. When we're talking about accreditation, we're referring to ABET accreditation, the Accreditation Board of Engineering and Technology.
We are, yes.
Okay, great.
So
I'm here to provide the context for the inside baseball technical terms that you're using.
You are my subtitles. I appreciate that. So this coincided with the general education program at USC shifting who could teach what. So back in the really old days, there's always been a 2-course writing sequence. So there was freshman writing, then there was advanced writing. Previously, those were all done in the freshman year. So by the end of your freshman year, you were a perfect writer.
They were all just expository writing. Whatever that class ended up being about, whatever the topics ended up being about, it was most focused on writing for the sake of writing.
That's right. And there's great value there. And and I would have nothing but good things to say about the general education program at SC. The decision at that point was, all right, well, let's evolve the advanced writing component and have it be more discipline specific. So the schools were invited to propose their own version of what would now be writing 340. So the freshman writing is still taken within the freshman year, taught by the college, the Orange College of Letters, Arts, and Sciences. There are now versions for engineering. There are versions for the Marshall School of Business. And so those are theoretically taken during the junior year. So the thought is to have communication skills taught within the context of your profession. So it becomes part of your professional identity.
Right.
So rather than writing about, just the ethical framework of X, Y, or Z, you're discussing it in an engineering context. So we did that successfully for many, many years as a shameless point of self-promotion. In one of the recent accreditation reviews, the program was called out as one of the 3 strengths of the school.
That's great.
And then about 3 years ago, we were charged by our dean to expand what we do. We'd always touched upon ethics, we'd always touched upon societal impact, and his thought, which is very, I think, and correct, is we need to do more, and we need to formalize approach of having these more humanistic sides of an engineering education embedded in the Viterbi curriculum, in the Viterbi intellectual life. And so we rebranded and refocused the program from the engineering writing program to the engineering in society program. And a lot of this is very purposeful. So we spent some time as a faculty discussing, should we be engineering and society or engineering in society? And you can imagine with a bunch of wordsmiths and grammar geeks, where we were having a long discussion about that conceptually, and I think correctly we ended up as engineering in society, because it's about how building awareness of students' responsibility to society and what how they articulate their ideas, and ultimately understanding, look, you have a responsibility to the people who will be affected by the technologies, whether that you're working in and developing, whether it's computer science and artificial intelligence, whether you're civil engineering and you're building a bridge, whether it's biomedical engineering and you're designing the next type of cancer treatment. It's impactful, and so that's our new footprint, is to deal with these, again, humanistic humanities types of educational efforts.
So you mentioned
that may have been too long-winded for you.
It's not. No, that's the best part about a podcast, is nothing can be long-winded. It's never long-winded enough. Which is also why I knew you'd be great on the podcast.
I feel like I'm at home. Thank you.
I was home for a spit take there.
It's not. We're not over yet. So hang in there.
This idea of what is at most universities a traditional writing curriculum is required. Let's just call it that. Writing classes are required, and most universities also offer opportunities for students to find their way out of it. Like, hey, well, if you did this before you get out of it, USC does not do that. We don't allow students out of it because it's a critical part of anyone's education. And to carry that over, writing and communication, as you mentioned, is a critical part of an engineering student's education. A number of prospective engineers may be shocked to hear that. And a number of parents of engineers may not be really loving this situation. But if we could talk to a 16, 17-year-old right now that is probably looking at engineering because maybe they don't necessarily like their English classes as much as they like their math classes. When we hear about the importance of writing and communication, and we can talk philosophically about it, or we can talk practically about it, how can we help them understand why these writing practices are important? And I think that's going to lead into societal impact, and hence the reshaping of the program. But I think we should start there on the importance of writing and communication.
So I would start my pitch here by saying that kind of two myths that I try to dispel. One of them is that there is no need to communicate as an engineer. And if you that there's this cliche that they get to kind of like Office Space, where they get to stay in their cubicle and just work on their own,
right?
And I can cite any number of surveys from employers that say that the higher you go in any organization, the more communicating you're going to be doing. And so it's really a vital part of your professional identity, but also of leadership. And the people who come to Viterbi, I think, are in many ways destined for leadership positions. And so we want to make sure that they have that part of the toolkit. As we get more, as the world gets even flatter, you're going to have to communicate with people who don't speak your primary language, people who aren't in your primary field.
Yeah.
The point of writing 340, the main learning outcomes is that we want to have students be able to write for a public audience, an academic audience, and a professional audience. So you're not always writing the same thing to everybody, that you have to analyze your audience. You have to make sense to different people utilizing different tools. The second myth that I try to dispel is that there's no need, or I'm sorry, that was the first one. The second one is that they are incapable of this, that there's this cliche of engineers as these uncommunicative, really number smart people.
Yeah.
And as someone who comes from a arts and letters background, I can say very sincerely that engineers and engineering students are often much more creative, much more aware of, not aware, but they're much more capable of creativity than a lot of artists that I know. If you think about what an engineer is doing, creating something out of nothing, it's staggering. I mean, it's mind blowing. They're really smart people who are asked to solve problems. That to me is really the definition of creativity. So you have those necessities for this course that and obviously we have to cure all of societal ills with this one course. It is 4 units. So the goal of the course is to not only establish a skill set, but also an understanding of the importance of that skill set.
Do you think that a student identifying as part of what you said, I think is that's not me. I'm not the writer. I've identified this other way, and so this is not a skill set I'm good at. Do you think that's because it's a shortcut for knowing what they are good at? Do you think that K through 12 education tends to push people in certain directions? Like, well, you're not good at that, so why don't you lean more on this side? I mean, we talk a lot about how there are a number of different populations or a number of different types of students that are kind of urged away from engineering, whether they mean to or not. Do you think that engineers are kind of told not to look in the writing direction? Like, why don't we just focus on what you're good at?
I've struggled with that over the years. I mean, when does this, it's a chicken or the egg proposition. Yeah. Does this type of person go into engineering, or does engineering make a certain type of person? And the truth is probably somewhere in the middle. But in the end, we're dealing with 18, 19, 20-year-old people.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter what your background is, doesn't matter what your intended profession is. You're going to not only need these skills, but also you're going to have the same challenges that other students are going to have. Just because you're a writing major doesn't mean you're good at writing. So and so there's some continuity there. Where that mindset comes from, that you need to be a certain way. I think part of it is our fault as a school, that maybe there are ways that we're defining our students. Maybe I think part of it is societally driven, that you have this is what you're supposed to be. And if there's a way that we can push back, and then we should do that. But we also don't want to lose the benefits of mindset. So it's I think as long as we continue to struggle with it, we'll be good.
Yeah. I mean, it's a little bit of, I like the idea of the chicken egg analogy. It's also an interesting point where they are at this critical age where I have lots of talks with students that are coming out of high school because they believe that this is the time that I now get to solidify who I am. And we all know in working with college students and also just, having been there ourselves, that it's not a moment. It's not a switch that you pull. It's something that happens way over time. And the amount of changes and evolutions and things that happen over time really go to that place. And I think an engineer is always focused on efficiency in most opportunities. They're trying to find the most efficient route. And they get to college and say, I've chosen a major. That means that that's what I'm studying. And so they don't realize that there's so many other elements to a full, well-rounded education. That leads me. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So I was going to say, I think that's part of the approach that we need to take as a program, and especially with this course. It's not you talk about efficiency. If our goal was efficiency, then we would say, here's what you put into ChatGPT.
I'm glad you brought this up. Yeah.
Create a paper.
Yeah.
But that's not what we teach. We mindfully, purposefully do not teach just outcomes. The goal is not to have a 10-page paper. The goal is critical thinking, to think through topics, to wrestle with topics, to be confused by things, to learn to articulate your point of view, maybe change your point of view. I tell my students there are obviously appropriate and effective places for an AI resource. You don't need to spend a lot of time sweating over the invite to the Christmas party that you're going to be sending out. But writing also is not just agreeing with the organization of a string of characters. So what in a way you're creating your own data set. If in 5 years or 5 months I'm able to tell Word, please write this. I always say please when I talk with ChatGPT for some reason. My wife hates that, but please write an email in my voice that explains this or that. There's enough body of work that I have that says this is what I sound like. Our students are still not struggling. They're not at that point. They're still finding their voice. They're still finding their, the way that they want to present themselves to the world and articulate their themselves. And so I think that's always going to be here. Technology won't take the place of the need for someone to express themselves as themselves. So, if all we were doing was teaching them how to write a basic compliance report, all right, job done.
Yeah.
But that's not really what we're trying to do. We're trying to go a little bit deeper in terms of their critical thinking.
So I'm glad you brought that up because that was going to be my next question, and it sounds like a simple question, but I think it's far more complex. And again, to a 17-year-old, in this, let me kind of preface this in the best way I possibly can. I have found that many, not all, high school students these days have figured out the hacks, right?
Yeah.
How am I going to get an A in this class? How am I going to be successful in high school? That could be generational based on access to information. We could talk about, all the technology that everybody has, not even getting into ChatGPT or AI stuff. But even before AI, I'm constantly talking to high school students about there isn't a hack for the rest of your life, because a K through 12 education may have somewhat of a sense of formulaic tendency, and there's ways to do certain things. But the minute you get to college, if you're starting to search for those hacks, we end up losing it. So that's a long preamble to this main thought that I have, and I don't know if they're actually connected. But how do you explain what is critical thinking? Because I think that's the gap, right? And we see it in students that have the ability to make that leap to understand what critical thinking is. You started to touch on it, the idea of being confused and formulating opinions, and but it's not just thinking a certain way. And how does writing create that skill set of critical thinking, because I do think that that is one of the largest learning leaps that people make in college, and we can see it in students. And in some senses, I kind of see that as a transition of young adulthood to adulthood.
So I'll answer that in many different.
Yeah. It's a weird question, but
seemingly unrelated ways.
That's how I ask questions, seemingly unrelated. So it's okay.
Then I'm on the right show.
Yeah.
So I think what you first have to do is you have to look at teaching writing as teaching a process. It is one of the pillars of our program is experiential learning. So what is the experience that you're having? And my job as an instructor is to assess the process, not just the outcome. So what I'm looking at is how are you collaborating with people? How are you researching? How are you integrating that research into your own work? How are you seeking out alternate perspectives? How are you challenging yourself to come up with a perspective that is yours? It's really difficult these days to not just go out and do a quick search and whatever comes up number one on Google, that's the truth.
Right.
Well, that's part of a college education is distinguishing the types of information that you're given. And by the way, I put in a shameless plug for a new course that we just developed.
Yeah.
One of my faculty, Helen Choi, has a new course called EIS 300. Oh, I'm sorry, EIS 103 on information literacy, which examines social media and other digital technologies and how to tell what's valid, what's not valid. And so, we're kind of in that age of information overload.
Yeah.
And the hack that you mentioned earlier might be, all right, what's the first answer here? If I was going to mention Occam's razor, but I know I'll get it wrong here. But
the simplest answer being the most.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's when it comes to critical thinking, you don't want the first thing that comes to your mind. Sometimes that's the right thing, but this is a time in life when you should think about alternate ways alternate ways the world can work. So let's see. So I think we really want to focus on and put value on the process that leads up to whatever bright and shiny paper you're going to have at the end of the process.
Right.
And ChatGPT AI can be a tool. Those hacks have always been around. You could always hire someone to write your paper. You can always use get extra help to do things. But that's part of our job, is to not create mousetraps, but it's to create opportunities for learning that the students are going to find engaging. A huge compliment to the faculty at EIS. The student evaluations, while they're not, this isn't a perfect metric for a writing course for engineers that they're forced to take. They end up loving the course, and they end up really seeing it as valuable and seeing its applicability to their disciplines.
Well, I think that goes back to the core part of our conversation in the beginning, which was that it's not just a writing class. It's about how we're using writing to have an impact on society, or to understand impact on society, or to strengthen our impact on society, focused on a net positive impact.
I'm sorry. It's also, the impact that we have on ourselves and on our peers. A couple elements of the course that we've developed over the years that speak to the uniqueness of the course. One is the the theater improv aspect to it.
Yeah.
So I don't think anyone in your demographic will know who Alan Alda is. Will they? I've asked that of my students, and it's
maybe if some parents are watching, maybe
some parents
or listening, I should say.
So back in 2008, we had the actor Alan Alda come to Viterbi, and he was interested in developing new ways to teach science communication. And so we had the Viterbi students give very brief technical presentations. He then put them through some theater improv exercises, and then they gave the presentations again using those techniques. And there's a obvious improvement. So what we've done over the years and are still doing is we work with the School of Dramatic Arts, the theater department. One of our faculty, Elizabeth Weiss, has been really taking the lead on this and coordinating with them. We use MFA students almost as TAs, and they come into one or two of the sessions, and they lead, if you can picture this, engineering students through theater improv exercises. And it's not just to have fun, which it is, but we tie them to specific learning outcomes. So if, let's say that a student is getting ready to give a technical presentation, this can be geared to having them learn how to express themselves non-verbally. It can be something as simple as eye contact, something as not simple as inflection for a particular audience. Or it might be tied to collaboration, that you're starting a group project. What are ways to, I think, innovatively teach and provide experiences toward developing collaborative skills? So I think it's a really great way and different way to develop these skills in our students.
Yeah, I will always tell whoever listens to me that the most impactful class I ever took in college was improv. It was so impactful I took it twice, and it was, and I say that not really joking. Like it was a lot of fun. I ended up meeting some really cool people in that class, but to me in particular, I found that it helped me understand my place in space, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
And then obviously a lot of what I do now is talking to people and understanding how I can understand that relative physical space and my role in that. And it's that idea of learning how to be uncomfortable, or how to be comfortable with being uncomfortable, if that makes any sense.
Yes, and see what I did there?
Look at you,
see what I did there?
What's up, Chicago school? What's up?
You also learn to I was so impressed with my segue there that I lost my train of thought.
You're patting yourself on the back.
That's right. And also getting back to something you were talking about earlier about the nature of an engineer and the nature of an engineering student, and the chicken or the egg proposition. This type of experience will also bring out those creative elements in a student that we were talking about earlier. You have the stats more than I, that what percentage of the USC marching band is made of engineering students? I mean, it's a ridiculous number. It's like 30%, wasn't it?
It's like, yeah, last I checked, who knows how much it is, and I don't know if it's ever official, but yes, it's roughly 30%. My understanding is that it is the most of any academic unit on campus is the engineering school make up the marching band.
Yeah, and there's this correlation between
math and music.
Math and music, yeah, exactly. Yeah. So we're giving the Richard Feynmans of the future their bongos, and we're hoping that they'll take off. So,
but it is that I like that idea of, I think one of the things that has been threaded through this conversation is that and why it's important that your courses are not necessarily called writing classes is that there is a thread of writing that finds its way through. There are endpoint uses, applications that find their way into writing, but it's really just about the idea of understanding how to have that effect on society and how communication is part of that. And you're going to be communicating in a number of different ways. And there are technical understandings of communication. And then there's just the idea that communication happens between two human beings.
That's right.
And that may happen in between person, that may happen in writing, that may be a presentation. And I know that you cover all of those different skill sets when a student is going through, the writing, curriculum, but also the engineering and society curriculum, which I know we've been focused so much on writing because I just love this topic and this idea of writing. I have one more question related to writing, and then I do want to dip into how engineering and society is more than just some writing courses. But when it comes to writing, what is probably the one thing that you find yourself teaching to engineering students about their writing? What's the one thing that they realize, like, oh yeah, or is there one thing that they all need to do better, or that they thought they were doing right that they needed to change?
I think I'll use the general term voice, and by that I mean, how is this paper Paul Ledesma's? How is this paper this person's? And
it's usually I overcapitalize things. I'm of the Benjamin Franklin era where I like to capitalize all nouns.
Yeah. How is this beyond the emoji that you send? I mentioned Helen Choi earlier. She's one of our faculty. She also has this assignment that she had published in a website at Harvard, it having to do with AI, and I'm not going to represent it properly, but essentially it asks students to have a letter of recommendation written for them by AI. So if you go to somebody that you know or you trust, and they write something for you that is created by AI, will that have that impactful voice that you're going to have? So back to your question, it's having students build this sense of authority that in all the PhD students that I've worked with over the years, one of the believe it or not, these are brilliant people, and their main challenge in writing is this: I'm not worthy. I'm writing. I'm summarizing the literature, and I'm saying here's where some work needs to be done. But who am I to fill this void? And so when you're talking about, again, 18, 19, 20-year-old people, to build an authoritative voice is challenging. And to have an authoritative, unique voice is even more challenging. So how are you sounding like yourself, and how are you owning that topic? That to me is the biggest challenge in these courses. Whether you're communicating in a written context or in an oral context, you just don't want to memorize something and recite it. That's not communicating. That's something else. You're not just feeding you're not a prompt engineer. You're not just going to have something else spit out something and say, this is who I am and what I believe.
Yeah.
So that's an ongoing challenge, but it's also it's one of the joys of the job is seeing students in particular situations, whether it's working with an outside nonprofit that they're doing a consulting project for, whether it's the improv things, whether it's writing for one of the magazines that we have. There's a certain amount of satisfaction that you get in kind of crossing a T and dotting an I, but they're your letters, as opposed to just having some machine spit it out for you.
I'm struck by how much I'm hearing So we spend so much time talking to students about their application, and in so many ways they are one of the things I refer back to is what I was talking about earlier, is that they try to find the hack. What's the formula?
Yeah.
What are
Yeah.
you looking for in the application? And I have to spend a lot of time trying to unwind their preconceived notions and unwind their brain to get to the fact that there's no way to get an A on this paper. When they think of their application to USC, they think there's a formula. How do I get the A? How do I get admitted?
Yeah.
And I try to get down to a lot of things that overlap or are parallel to the things you just say. And one of the you mentioned authority, like finding their voice. And we spend a lot of time talking about using their authentic voice. Like who are you? What do you do? Don't sit there and try to find what you think is the answer we're looking for on this application, because that's not the answer. It's how you're responding to this question. And sometimes the answer is I don't know. And there's great ways to say I don't know, but you just have to tell me what that's all about as you get to this application.
There's that that piece of advice that I'm sure we've both heard from people in Microsoft who say, if you're applying for a job at Microsoft, don't use a Microsoft template for your for your resume, because all that says is that you're relying on someone else's idea of how you're going to express yourself.
Clippy jumps up. The little paper clip jumps up and says, "It looks like you're applying for a job for Microsoft." That's a data reference right there.
There you go. So and these are things that people have been struggling with long before we were here, and they'll be struggling with long after we're here. But that's part of the beauty of being human, is struggling with this and being in a room full of people who are going through the same journey. So
being human is probably the best little thing that I'll pull out as I give you some pet peeves that I've just been dancing around my head as you've been talking about it. But like, are you
against the idea of being human, or are you?
No, here's what I'm getting to.
Okay.
I want people to be human. And I am so annoyed lately at the amount of emails I get sent that were written by AI.
Yeah.
Because I don't know about you, but isn't it incredibly obvious that it was written by AI? Hey everyone, this is Paul. Sorry for the interruption, but I wanted to let you know about a new feature we just unlocked. It's about sending us questions or comments via text. If you go to your podcast player, check the show notes. There's a link there that says send us a question or comment. It may be on our next episode. So go in there, send us a little quick text message. Let us know what your questions are. Let us know what your comments are. We'd love to hear from you. So we can't wait to see it. Now, back to the episode.
Yeah. And there were always, so we just have a new type of hack now.
Yeah.
And there are some cases where you don't really care. So I'll give you an example of in my, I like all ministers have one good sermon. So I have one good lecture as a teacher. And so
you've waited till this point to start it. So up until this point.
That's right. That's right. Now it'll get good.
It's all about reeling them in slow, Steve. You bring them in. Now you're here 45 minutes in. Check it out.
We've set the bar low. So so what I tell him, so I give him the scenario where I'm back in the day where I'm trying to get my wife to go on a date with me, my now wife. And I take out some parchment paper and a quill, and I write, my dear, I so miss you and look forward to the time we get to be with each other and get to know each other better. And please join me for dinner tomorrow. And
on the morrow.
On the morrow, signed, Steve Bucher, Professor, or whatever. So then I roll it up and put a bow on it and hand it gracefully to her.
And this is a real story. You did this, or you're speaking metaphorically about how like
I'm making this. I'm making this up. So then I say, all right, if let's say I send the same message via text, is that the same message? And that leads to a 20-minute discussion / argument amongst all the students in the class saying, no, that's not going to do the trick. You need, this needs to be genuine. This needs to come from you. The effort that goes into it means something. And so that gets to your question of, being human and not having AI generate something, an email that has a purpose beyond just informing. I mean, writing is not just delivering information. There are many levels that you have to connect with people on, and you have to use the necessity of being human to do that.
So now I'm going down a whole other parallel.
Go ahead.
I think we may have talked about this in the past, but AJ Jacobs, his books, The Know-It-All, The Year of Living Biblically. I don't know if you've read his books. He's a New York Times columnist.
No, but go ahead.
He just came out with his next book, and I'm about halfway through it right now, and it's fantastic. First of all, the other books, The Know-It-All, is like he's trying to read the encyclopedia to become the smartest person in the world, and the book is his journey of trying to do that in a year. Then he has this Year of Living Biblically, where he essentially lives by the most literal definition of the Bible for a year. Like he can't shave his beard, he can't have two different types of cloths on, whatever Leviticus says. And then right now, his third book is The Year of Living Constitutionally. And he's trying to live as it's his humble quest to live by the founding fathers' original meaning. And then there's a large debate in the book about originalist meaning and the living definition of the Constitution. But one part of it is how the writing of the day with the quill on the paper, the more intention approach to that with this flowery language and somewhat, he called it suppressed language. It allowed him to not be angry if he was angry about someone. Like he's not going to write a mean tweet, for example, but he's going to be able to do that. That would calm him down. And there's a lot of parallels of things that you said as well. And then a whole bunch of other stuff that's very interesting to this.
I mean, and then that just fortifies the notion that it's the journey. If you say, well, what do you get out of living biblically for a year? Well, there may not be something tangible that is the result, but it's the experience that makes the difference here.
I guess my main pet peeve about AI is that I know why the students are, whenever someone sends me an email, like it's a high school student, I can feel the nerves on the other end of the computer. Like they're nervous, they're doing it wrong, and I appreciate the effort. And oftentimes you could see where parents edited the email because they didn't change the font. Like he copied and pasted, he or she copied and pasted from the mom's email. And that's the much different term. There's more polite language in there and it gets brought up with something else. And all that is appreciated. I want to make sure that I'm not speaking negatively about it, but the new emails that are completely drafted by AI, one of my pet peeves is that it's taken them like 7 paragraphs to get to one question, and I have no idea where the question is, and I have to read it 6 different times to figure out where are we going in this journey. Like it's just upsetting to me, and I'm just more venting as far as the use of AI.
Good luck with that. One thing that I'll add to kind of flip the focus. A few years ago, there was one of the projects we did in my class was to design the classroom of the future.
Yeah.
And the goal was it's not a design, it's using some design thinking, but it's obviously we're not building a classroom, but it's creating a technical report that would for a particular client. But so the question was, what do you want in the classroom of the future?
This is also understanding how to respond to requests for proposals.
That's right.
So this is the idea of actually going through and writing that proposal out. And that's a strong technical skill that someone needs to have as an engineer.
That's right. And I can give you some more examples of that in a bit. So my expectation was, all right, we're going to get, holograms of Copernicus doing this, and we're going to have, tigers shooting laser beams out of their eyes and all these different things. And granted, this is a very small set, but the main overwhelming response the number one necessity that students said was, we want someone in the front of the room who cares about us.
Huh.
And so really the responsibility of students, whether it's AI, whether it's some other resource, I think falls on the faculty to an extent also, is to show clearly what the value is that the students are doing. And so then they would not be as compelled to use ChatGPT to write Paul an email asking for this. So I'd like for us to assume some of that responsibility, and not just say don't do that, but it's why you don't do that.
Education is a two-way street.
That's right.
It's the idea of the hand-in-hand collaboration of faculty and student, and it's a back and forth. And often, you're not alone in faculty often saying how much they learn from students.
Yeah.
And I always hear year after year when we're at our annual award ceremony, I think every single faculty member who earns the award for Teacher of the Year, whatever that teaching award is, every year it's the same thing, that I learn more from the students than they learn from me. And I don't think that's embedded into the acceptance speech. It's a true feeling that's the connection they have.
But I think if we're talking chicken or the egg, do people who care about students going to teaching, or do people who are teaching end up caring about kids or students? And I think part of that, to your credit, to the school's credit, we as a program are not outliers in having this approach. I think that if you don't mind a shameless plug for Viterbi, I think that's part of the culture of the school, is that it's not just ones and zeros and what have you. It's it's purposeful education. It's not just the technical part of it.
That's a nice transition, because I know you've been very generous with your time, but I want to make sure we did touch on the purposeful part of an education is not just laying out classes, but the Engineering Society program, while born from the writing program, is a curricular and co-curricular experience for undergraduate students that engages not only in communication, but also in ethics education, which I'd love for you to unpack a little bit. What is ethics? How does that get incorporated into an engineering education? Why is it important? And also all of these other elements for students to get involved in Engineering Society. While we are going to have it threaded through the required courses of our academy class and our writing courses, some of our technical design classes, there's other ways in which students might want to embed themselves even further in Engineering Society. So I've just loaded up like 10 questions for you, but for you to talk a little bit more about what Engineering Society is at its breadth.
No problem.
This is a long tee up.
There you go. So obviously there's the curricular part of it, and there is you kind of have to look at this as a kind of an across the curriculum type of part of the solution, is an across the curriculum part of the solution. So you can't teach writing with just one course. You can't teach ethics with just one course. So, we have to embed, say, within Freshman Academy, an ethics component, which we have within the capstone courses at the end of someone's undergraduate time. Kind of the summative projects that they're doing, embedding, and we're developing new. We have some existing modules. We're developing new ones. We're also developing some communication across the curriculum modules. So we have a couple of courses that are specifically for ethics. One is a wonderful course, co-taught and designed by Elisa Warford from EIS. This is called Ethics, Technology, and Value. It's a cross-listed course, which for those curriculum geeks out there means that you can take it as an engineering course, but also as a philosophy course. So it's co-taught by the Department of Philosophy and by Viterbi. and it talks about philosophical and ethical questions that relate to technology. So that is one opportunity that we have. We have a new course. We have a new faculty member, Catherine Berhacek, who has her PhD in philosophy. And so she's designed a new course, EIS 300, which looks at ethical and social impacts of technology and engineering innovations. So finding ways to have as a curricular option ways to focus, much like 340, our 340 is within the context of engineering practice. These courses, because they are embedded in a school of engineering, is one of the things that makes us unique. Oftentimes when you go to a school of engineering and they have these types of programs, they're external. They're taken, they're provided by a different department. But here it's formally part of the School of Engineering. So students don't see it as an add-on. They don't see it as, well, I got to get this out of the way.
Yeah.
Some of the extracurriculars that we have a magazine. So one thing that we've done with 340 is we really want the learning to go beyond the walls of the classroom. So it's not just you write a paper, you get a grade, and it goes in some digital folder somewhere. One of the assignments has to do with dealing with an ethical issue in your field, and one potential outcome is submitting it for a publication that we have called Viterbi Conversation and Ethics. It's run by Martha Townsend from our faculty. It's vce.usc.edu. And it is a wonderful publication that also has a podcast attached to it. And it allows students to not only in the context of the course wrestle with these ethical issues that are confronting them as nascent upcoming engineers, but also it allows them to share it with the rest of the world potentially. We have another shameless plug magazine, Illumin, which Illumin, ILLUMIN.usc.edu, that has students explain how engineering impacts everyday life. So getting back to your example of an AI generated letter, if you wanted to have an article written about the engineering behind an espresso machine, you could probably find that out there. You could have ChatGPT do that for you in, 30 seconds. But if this is something that you really care about, then you're going to do the research. You're going to do the, again, have your voice in this. And so this magazine allows students, again, to be read by, essentially the rest of the world. And a lot of the analytics that we see from both websites are that it's primarily not USC readership. It's outside of USC. So I'm aware that Illumin in some cases was used in different universities in their course readers. That VCE was recognized as a really valuable resource that educators could use. I mentioned Martha Townsend. She also started an ongoing series called The Good Life, which is a discussion series. This builds on Aristotle's notion that a good life is developed when citizens kind of cultivate reason and they engage in scientific inquiry and deep discussion. Essentially, what is a life of virtue? What is a valuable life? And so we're trying to increase the number of these sessions. And there'll be a video posted on our website fairly soon that was done. It's just a wonderful discussion that is hopefully becoming more of a part of the intellectual culture of Viterbi, where students have these unproctored discussions some of the most valuable education you get is in your dorm room when you're talking with your friends.
3 a.m.
Yeah, this is less informal. I guess another way of saying more formal, but it's also I am a writer after all.
Double negative.
Yeah,
it's not informal.
That's right, but it's part of it's an opportunity to have these discussions with people that you might not ever sit in a room with. And it's limited to, I think, 25, 30 people, and they have smaller groups. There are no faculty in the room when it starts. It's proctored by graduate students. We had the last couple of versions had a PhD student in computer science and a PhD student in philosophy run the discussions, and it's just a wonderful outcome. We have another project called called Ethos Live, which is a kind of a panel discussion that's more for an external audience that we videoed. Those will be posted soon. One was on the ethics of tech startups. What should people keep in mind? Especially, Viterbi students tend to a good percentage of them want to start their own company. So what are some of the ethics involved there? Another one was on deep fakes and some of the ethical issues behind that. And we have a couple more coming up this semester. We're trying to do as much as we can with courses. We're trying to develop all these extra and co-curricular efforts that can contribute to the experience that a Viterbi student has while they're here. And hopefully that will last them a lifetime.
One thing that I would hate for us not to talk about is that some of the coursework, specifically the Writing 340 course, has an international element. And it's not necessarily every course, but I would like students to hear about these opportunities where we've worked hard to create essentially overseas components inside of what was an old school traditional writing class that's now this much more of a impact in society course. And then it has an overseas element.
Yeah. So we've developed, and this is mostly through the efforts of Harley Ramsey, who's the associate director of the program. We've developed these versions of Writing 340 where students will go to Berlin, will go to Tokyo, they'll go to Sydney. We have one coming up in Botswana in the spring. And they're either what's called a fall lead, or you really want to geek out on some terminology here. They're either a fall lead or a spring tail. So a fall lead is the semester starts August 26th, but 2 weeks before that, they'll go to Berlin and spend time there. Have that, not only just the experiences, it's not a travel course, but they engage in technical and ethical issues that are pertinent to that culture in which they're living for those 2 weeks. And then they come back, and the rest of the semester they build on that. In the spring, it's what's called a spring tail, or sometimes it happens on spring break, where you have your trip abroad either after commencement or during the spring break. It's very, very, it's just an opportunity for engineering students to have a study abroad opportunity without having to interrupt their degree progress.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, and some of the videos on your website are really cool for students to see. And just so that you know, we're going to put all the links that you've brought up: Viterbi Conversations in Ethics, Illumin, the EIS program. There's a bunch of videos that you have. We'll put that in the show notes here so that people can get off to that. I want to give you. I have one last thing for you. But before I get to that, I want to give you an opportunity. I've been asking the questions here, but is there something you want to talk about that I didn't bring up? Is there something that we've been missing when it comes to EIS?
So EIS has three pillars. One is communication. How do you engage in critical thinking, and how do you articulate your ideas to society? Another pillar is ethics and societal impact. Understanding what the impact on society is, and then the third is engineering education and experiential learning, and learning how to engage with society. So, I think our bona fides in terms of communication are good. I think it's especially considering where we are with AI and those things. We always have to challenge ourselves to become more to be relevant to our students' experiences. And then ethics is another thing that we're developing approaches to. We're putting together an ethics lab. I won't go into a lot of detail because a lot of it is very kind of in development. I mean, my experience with students is that they find what we offer valuable. I think that sometimes we can do a better job of getting the word out to them. So I guess one question to you would be, as someone who knows students, what could we be doing better to engage them? What could we be doing better to invite them?
That's a great question that I'll mumble through a response.
Is it improper to ask the host questions?
No, this is better because then it keeps me on my toes. So I'll find my way around to the answer here in a minute. But one of the things I find as a trend among incoming students, or at least high school students that I'm speaking with, or students that are seeking admission to the university, is in the kindest way possible, they have overblown expectations of what's going to happen next. And the cultural, the zeitgeist, the environments in which they were brought up in speak of college in a legendary fantasy filled environment, right? So like,
Yeah.
Oh my God, your college is the best 4 years of your life. And oh my God, that's where all the learning occurs. And oh my God, that's where you become a human being. Like that's where you become your own self. And that's where independence lives. And that's where every one of your dreams comes true. It's this utopia that is on the other side of the hill that they've been hearing about for years. And so most of their questions are about, tell me about utopia and tell me about how great it is. And also, I've been hearing about all these other utopias, and do you have this in your utopia? Because they have it over here. And do you have, do you have free ice cream machines on, like every college has developed different marketing methods over years, and students are trying to find the best choice. Students are trying to find the best place for them. And oftentimes, I'll stereotype engineers, but it is true for a reason that most engineers are trying to find the quote unquote best institution where they will be the most successful in their future. And so they are coming in challenging, why are you better than this other place? Tell me why I should come there. And it's a great perspective that they have, which is, don't tell me why don't tell me why you're great. Tell me why you're good enough for me is an interesting element. Now, granted, we get through and we find, I think, students that are going to be a good fit here. And I believe wholeheartedly in our admission process of our file review process that finds good human beings, for lack of a better term. But that said, I think that there's this really interesting gap between a student's expectations and when they graduate. And there is a cliff that every student falls off of in their first year. And usually that cliff is the fact that they A, can't fly yet, or B, thought they were supposed to do something that they didn't do, or it's a lot harder than they thought they were going to do. There's another analogy I give where college is like me at a buffet in Vegas, where I am just blown away by all of the options. and I make a plan in my head of all the different things I'm going to eat. And plate one's going to have this, 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 and plate two is going to have that, and plate three, and then dessert, I'm going to have this, this, this.
And you end up filling up on bread.
On the plate one, I'm done. I'm done. I can't do any more. And so is that student a failure because they didn't accomplish the things that they said they were going to do on their way in? We had an episode on our podcast with graduating seniors about, oh God, what was the name that they called it? It was the coolest name for it, but it was like my, I'm going to have to look it up before we're done. But it's basically like how I'm going to, my college domination list. These are the things I wrote down coming out of high school that I was going to dominate in college. And now I know it as a senior, it was great to have those goals, but how reality is. So this is a really long way around to the fact of how do we help manage expectations in a caring way where we don't talk down to them like, oh, you're such a dreamer, like we don't want to do that. That doesn't help them. How do we get them to that point? I think we do that. I don't think there's anything that we're not doing, but I think there is this really interesting disconnect of a student has a relationship with a faculty member in the class. A student has a relationship with a friend in their dorm. A student has a relationship with an academic advisor. I think we do a good job of being consistent across those things, but it's not like we all meet to talk about those things, if that makes any sense. I don't know.
Yeah.
Is that an answer to your question? I don't know.
It is. Yeah. Again, it's the journey, not the destination.
I tell my wife that all the time.
Yeah. It probably works as well as it does with my wife. I think part of it is, and part of the reason for my question is, I think that the expectation that I would have of students is curiosity, that they want to learn. They have they're curious about different things. They're curious about not just being in in whatever their course layout is, that from 9 to 10:30 I'm here, from here. So how do we tap into that curiosity? And then the satisfaction that comes from that is part of our responsibility. Both me as a faculty, you as a in student affairs. I think there are equal moments of responsibility that come in this journey. And I'm always curious what can we do as a program? What can I do as a faculty member and as a person to tap into that curiosity to say, how can I, we have all these wonderful experiences. How do we give you the menu?
The other thing that comes to mind as you said that is we have a generation of students that have truly never failed in their life. And college is often the first time that they're going to fail. Yeah. And I can't wait for them to fail because that's where they really start to learn. And so I guess, how do we create opportunities to fail that don't blow them off of their course?
Yeah. I had this, you can imagine one of the more challenging parts of the communication course is students giving presentations, because nobody, when you take a survey of what do you fear most in life, number 2 is death and number 1 is public speaking. And
which is so weird for me because I just do it every day. So it's I don't mean to laugh at it, but it's always like people tell me that all the time. I'm like, why? I don't get it. I mean, did you not take an improv class in college?
I maybe don't lead with that when you're talking with students. And I remember back when I started teaching, I used to carry a briefcase because it made me look more authoritative.
Yeah,
and I
remember the patches on your elbows.
That's it. And a student was coming up to give a presentation, and she knocked over the briefcase by accident, not on purpose, and it spilled everything, and she was mortified. It was the best preparation she could have for her presentation, because you talk about failure. That's a pretty big meatball to spill on your shirt, and yet she didn't explode. She didn't, the world didn't end. And it was this wonderful metaphor for things happen. It's not what you did, it's what you do next. And that's, if there are those, life is full of high stakes moments. And if someone can get through a low stake moment and realize, yeah, I can get through this, then the high stakes stuff will be easier, hopefully.
No matter when we talk, I find myself always bringing up West Wing, and and I didn't mean to, but you just reminded me of the West Wing episode of the debate. I don't know if you remember this episode, but where President Bartlett is going into his debate for his second term, and he's about to go out and debate, and there's talking about the story about the first debate was like he had spilled something on his tie, so at the very last minute,
Oh, yeah,
he had
yeah.
to take Josh's tie, and
Yeah.
then at the end, his wife cuts his tie, and so they have to figure it out. And I'm like, I think of that moment all the time. You made me think of that again. I just watched it literally like a week ago.
Is your target audience, were they born after the West Wing was off the air?
Yes, yeah, they have no idea what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
No one understands what I'm talking about. Well, okay, first of all, West Wing reference, Alan Alda, you brought up before, and Alan
That's
Alda
right.
was on West Wing at the end.
That's
So,
right.
I mean, we're tying it all together.
It all works together.
Two old dudes
Put a bow on it. It's
two old dudes talking about MASH.
That's right.
It's really, really getting the generation going with suicide is painless.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
All right. You've been very generous with your time. I have one final thing. We do this. I try to do this when I remember. I have these lightning round questions, and I've got new. And honestly, by the way, just as a heads up, thank you so much for doing this. You were a fantastic kickoff. You were the premiere episode of season 10 of our podcast. If we believe it or not, this is the 10th year of our podcast. So
I'm flattered. I'm glad you didn't tell me that beforehand. I would have.
No pressure. Yeah.
Yeah, no pressure.
Well, I would have told the audience in the introduction that you were not a part of, that this is the premiere episode and no better person than you. And so I'm telling you that this is a big deal that you're our premiere episode. So thank you.
I appreciate it. And those listening, Paul and I have known each other for many, many years, and I've always appreciated what you've done for the school.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And yes, I was waiting till we got to 10 years to invite you on. I wanted to make sure. I thought that was where you're going to go with that.
I will look forward to 2034 when I'm on again.
All right, here we go. Lightning round questions.
Right.
First thing comes to your mind. Start the timer. Ready? Go. Here we go. Favorite ice cream flavor?
Oh, vanilla, of course.
With such confidence.
Of course. I have a lot of opinions on that, but go ahead.
I try not to have react.
It drives my kids crazy.
I try not to have reactions to people's answers, but then I keep doing it. So I'm sorry. All right. Say a word in Spanish.
Hola.
There you go. Do you believe in fate?
I think it's yes and no. I think that it's a type of fate that we don't understand. And I think that you also have control of the moments within that fate, if that makes sense.
Great answer.
Yeah.
Who has it easier, men or women?
Oh, men.
Yeah. I'm worried about this next one. Have you ever worn socks with sandals?
Let me qualify that.
Oh, you're
Is this when I go to get the garbage cans from in front of the house?
Have you ever worn socks with sandals? You're overthinking
it. Technically, yes. If it's, have I done that in a social setting? No.
That's a good point. I should say I would be embarrassed for you, but then I realized I do the same thing to go get the garbage cans. So like I put on the slides and I walk out. Yeah, so same way. Right. Name a primate besides monkeys and apes.
Humans.
Exactly. Yeah. Why can't we tickle ourselves?
I don't think we're all that funny, are we? Are there right answers to these, or are they?
No, not at all. Yeah. What does a person need to be happy?
Whatever they got. Sometimes the combinations of things that make us happy are the same combinations of things that make us unhappy. It's sometimes it's a perspective.
It's true.
Or vanilla ice cream. That was my second answer.
Is there such thing as objective beauty?
Yes. And I think objective beauty is not a tangible thing. I think objective beauty is an action or an attitude. Those things are objectively beautiful as opposed to, a person's face or a car or a painting.
What's the best age?
The standard answer is whatever age I am right now, but that's not true. The best age. Probably 4, because you're not you're not in school yet,
Yeah,
and people are doing everything for you.
it's a good point.
I think
It's a
that's
good
one.
point.
Yeah,
It's a good point.
I'll try it
Uh,
again.
if Voldemort offered you a hug, would you accept?
I have a really frustrating way to answer that, and you can edit this out. It's a bit of a
No,
long.
it's in now.
It's a bit of a long story. So you and I used to do the summer abroad program,
Yeah, yeah.
and we would go to Europe for 6, 7 weeks at a time.
Yeah.
So before we had kids, my wife and I only had a dog, and we boarded our dog when we were gone.
Mm-hmm.
And when we got back, we felt so guilty that we wanted to take another trip with the dog. So we put the dog in the car, went up to San Luis Obispo. When we got there, we realized, wait a minute, what can we do with a dog? We can't leave her in the hotel. We have to take her around. So the one thing that we did that was uh, really unique and fun was we went to a drive-in movie theater, and we went to see one of the Harry Potter movies with
Oh,
our dog. That is my knowledge of Harry Potter. So
that's the extent.
that's the extent. Yeah. So what would I do if he hugged me?
Offered you a hug, would you accept?
Have I ever met this man? I don't know. I'm not going to hug a stranger.
Okay. Yeah. So I think that now I'm going to dive into this. I usually won't do this. I don't care about Harry Potter. You have more background in Harry Potter than I do. I have somewhat of a knee-jerk repulsion to Harry Potter questions and information. I just never identified with it. It missed me. I think it missed you. Like it's not there. My daughter loves it. She's into it, and I'm catching glances of it now, and it's fine. But I guess the whole point of this is that like it's evil itself. Like I guess that's the whole point of the question.
Well, then I guess my if you explain it that way, my response would be, well, if my hug to him would have an impact on him in a good way, then maybe
Look
I
at
should
you.
maybe
Look
I
at you.
maybe I should hug him.
Look at you, just
Yeah.
changing the world with every one hug at a time. This is the last question. Is
All right.
double dipping at a party ever acceptable?
Yes, you're among friends. Don't worry
Got
about
it.
it.
I said that was my last thing, but I also have this uh for my father-in-law gives calendars out to everybody for Christmas.
Okay.
And
Calendars of
so it's his thing, and it's like he is so overjoyed. It is like his best moment on Christmas is when people open his calendars. It's a moment. Everybody has a calendar, and he has spent time finding the calendar for that person. So, like for example, my daughter will get a calendar of cats, and she's overjoyed, and he's overjoyed. My wife will get a calendar of I don't know, ceramics stuff because she's into whatever it's like whatever the personality is of that particular year. And I got a calendar this year of 365 dad jokes, and it's a desk calendar. And so every day I have a different dad joke, and the dad joke today is really relevant to you because of the shirt you're wearing.
Let me hear it.
I saw a bird eating avocado toast the other day. It was a millennial falcon.
For the people at home, I'm wearing a Millennial Falcon shirt.
Yes. Anyways, I want to wrap it there. It's been, again, like I said, you've been very generous with your time. I truly appreciate everything that you've shared with us, and of course, all the work that you continue to do. And so, thank you for joining us over the summer, and as you getting ready for your semester. So, good luck as we're welcoming students back in over the next couple of weeks. And,
Thanks. I'm happy to do it for you. B, happy to do it for the school, but mostly for students who are considering coming to Viterbi, students who are coming to Viterbi. Please take advantage of an open door, an open phone line, an open Zoom line. Contact me if you have questions, if you have concerns, if you have ideas. This is why we're here. So I appreciate the opportunity to brag about what some of the wonderful people in my program are doing.
it's great. Thanks again, Steve. And that's it. We're done. We'll
Thanks,
talk to you
Paul.
later.
Appreciate it.
And we're back. So that was a lovely episode. Thank you so much for taking care of that, Paul. It was really great to hear all the insights, especially as someone who's kind of been through some of those courses at school. It was really good to see how they kind of came about in the first place and what direction we want those programs to go in the future.
Can you talk about what, given that you've taken 340, given that what we talked about, how did it directly impact you, and what were some of the things that you worked on, and what do you remember about the course, as far as, like, some people would just think of it as a writing class, but it has other, elements to it. So how do you explain that as a student who's gone through that?
Yeah, it was actually a really cool class to take because from the get-go, you are writing articles that can be published on the Lumen and the Viterbi Conversations of Ethics pages that you mentioned earlier in the introduction.
Yeah.
So the main essays you're writing are in a Lumen article. So you really get to look through the website. You'll go through some of the articles with your professors, what people are talking about, what are relevant conversations that we should be having. And you really get to take a deep dive on parts of engineering that you wouldn't typically get to explore in your own discipline. So I'm computer science, and I wrote about ectogenesis, which is
What is
basic.
ectogenesis?
Yeah, it was a really cool topic, but it's basically about, oh my gosh, I'm forgetting the exact wording of it, but it's basically where you incubate an embryo, like a human embryo, outside of the reproductive system of a woman. So
Oh, wow.
it's like in vitro, but you do the entire process outside of the uterus. So
Wow.
you basically like grow a baby. And there's
Wow.
a lot of recent technology about it, but obviously that's not really something I would curate or learn about in my own course plan as a computer science major.
Yeah.
So it was really interesting getting to research that in my own time and figure out what that could look like in the future. And you get to write these really intricate pieces about it that you can also submit for publication. So it's really cool. You can see your work on the website if that's something you choose to do.
Yeah.
And then my Viterbi one about the ethics was about whether we should do genetic mutations on children, whether before they're born. So when you get their DNA charts, there are some modifications that are being explored right now, but I was debating where we draw those lines. So some of them are just for their health. Suppose they're born, if you can tell they have a genetic disease, you can go in and make some deletions, insertions to make sure they don't have the repercussions of that genetic disorder. But then where do you draw the line? Do you stop them from having super strength? Do you change the way they look? Like, where do we draw those boundaries in the world of engineering? So it was a really cool conversations to cover.
Can I ask a dumb question? Is
Yeah.
it, regardless of the ethics, is it actually possible to make someone have super strength? Like, is that a thing?
Yeah, I actually covered that in my essay of whether that would be a possibility. There is a research project about it, about kind of giving someone super strength. It wasn't to that extent. It wasn't like Superman coming in,
Yeah.
breaking a meteor, but there
Well,
was.
I'm not Superman. I mean, that's ridiculous. But like Steve Rogers is Captain America. That's obviously far more grounded in reality. But go ahead.
Yeah.
Because Superman's an alien. Let's get it straight. All right. So I'm sorry. It's a really bad
Actually, I never
example,
really
Safia. Come on.
watched. I never really watched like the DC Marvel movies until about a year ago, so I'm not well versed enough yet. But I forget the exact thing because I wrote this about a year and a half ago, but it was an experiment done where they had a set of twins and they injected one twin with something and one twin not, and they looked at the differences in their physical capabilities, and there was some nuances their physical abilities. So it could be a possibility. I don't know, but
Yeah.
it would be cool to see where that leads into.
Interesting. Cool.
Yeah.
I think I interrupted you. Was that your whole topic related
Oh,
to?
I did one more about sustainable fashion, which is something I'm really interested in because I'm in the
Cool.
club at USC. So it was something cool to like kind of combine all my interests in one.
Neat. Very cool. So I hope that everybody enjoyed the conversation. It gets a little wide ranging, but I think it was helpful, and hopefully what people understand is that, I think the main takeaway that I would want people to walk away with is that I don't know if there's another engineering school that puts that much thought into communication standards and relates it to ethics and pulls all of this together in creating trustworthy engineers. And hopefully that not only has an impact on you professionally and in your future, but it also makes it a little more interesting to you. Like you said, like you had to bring up these different ideas and thought processes and conversations. And I think that historically, or at least not historically, but from a stereotypical standpoint, I think a number of different people don't think of engineers as the ones to lead deep thought conversations.
Mhm.
And I think that is definitely wrong because I think you guys bring some different, interesting perspectives with your technical background.
Yeah, I totally agree on that. And I also appreciate that these classes that do focus on us being engineers in society, there's a large focus not only on the writing aspect, but the
Mm,
communication aspect as a whole. So even though we had a limited amount of essays, there was three main projects that we were submitting. There were presentations going on constantly. There were discussions happening constantly
mm.
behind the scenes, which I really appreciated from a class like that.
That's great. Very cool. So, back to New York. You're
Mhm.
still in, when do you leave? You're in New York today. You come home this weekend or?
Yes, I leave in less than in like 36 hours actually.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
A lot
Cool.
of
Good
packing
stuff.
to do.
A lot of packing to do. Is there anything you want to do before you leave? Is there still one last thing that you need to do before you
Yes.
leave?
Actually, in about 12 hours, I will be leaving my apartment to go to the Brooklyn Bridge to see sunrise from it.
Oh,
Yes, that's
wow.
the last thing on my bucket list.
Wow. That sounds
Yeah.
cool. That sounds really cool. Awesome. Um, and when you get home, you get back to the LA area, what's the first thing you want to do when you get back here? What are you missing the most about?
The beaches, definitely the
Yeah.
beach. Basic answer, but I just want to lay on a California beach with pokey and a smoothie in my hand and take a nap.
Okay. All right, cool.
That's all I
Do you
want.
have a go-to beach destination? This is a
Mm,
debatable topic.
controversial topic.
Yeah,
I would say Corona Del Mar if I am making the journey down there.
that's a drive.
That is a drive, but it might be worth it after the summer I've had. It's been very fast paced, and I just want to lay down on a beach. There's also an area near there where me and my friends sometimes will fly kites, so it's kind of fun.
Okay. Where do you
Yeah,
fly kites near CDM?
there's a part one of the main parking lots sometimes during the weekdays. I'm sure it's different during the summer, but not a lot of people go to it because it's costs a little extra. So there's just a lot of space to run around, and we'll just fly our kites around.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
Good
it's
stuff.
really
Good
cool.
stuff. Good stuff.
Um,
Um, sorry, I interrupt you.
I was
You
gonna
said
ask if you had a preference for beaches because you live in
I
Vir-
I live at the beach. Yeah, I mean, I'm not at
okay.
the beach, but I live near the beach.
Yeah.
And I grew up going to Corona Del Mar.
Mhm.
And so I would then like give you a deep cut question, like little CDM or big CDM,
Ooh,
like which one are you going to? Um, because are
wherever you
you
find parking.
wherever you find parking? Okay. And then because when I grew up, that was a good one. But when I was like in high school, we spent a lot of time in Newport around like
Mhm.
34th Street. That was a big spot for us during high school. And then here now, it's all about uh, honestly, like between Manhattan and Hermosa, we tend to flip flop between that. More often than not, probably find a spot right in between Manhattan and Hermosa. Um, but oftentimes it's wherever someone else is going. It doesn't really matter. In my opinion, these are the best beaches.
Mhm.
But it's also because it's not that crowded. I think when people think of like LA beaches, they're thinking of like Santa Monica, where like everybody and their mother goes from all of Southern California. And I quite literally has never been to the beach there.
Yeah.
And there's just so many stretches of beach to just hang out. El Porto is also a lot of fun. That's good times as well, which is the North Manhattan side of
Yeah.
things. It's where a lot of USC surfing clubs go because it's a great surf, great break there. So El Porto is a great spot if you have not been there. That's an awesome
I've
place.
I've been once, but it was again for sunrise. I don't know why I'm always doing things at sunrise, but
No
we just
kidding.
yeah, it was really pretty though. And again, like you said, there was no one there. Well,
Yeah.
obviously it was the sunrise, so no one would be there anyways, but
Yeah.
it was a really good spot. I liked it, but I want to go during the day once.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. Well, guess what? It's open during the day. You can go that. You can do that.
I'll test it out this school year.
Okay, a couple quick updates from the admission standpoint. First off, this is obviously our very first episode of the season, so we're just kind of getting our feet under us, and we'll get going. But as of now, you can expect a new episode from us every single Sunday. This will be a tease for next week's episode. Next week's episode will be a more in-depth conversation about the admission process and how to apply both as a first year student and a little bit on transfer. I think we can't get too deep into transfer yet. We'll do that when we do another episode later in the fall term as we get closer to a fall application deadline. But the idea about first year admission, we will discuss a little bit more. And I think, Safia, you'll bring enough to a bunch of that conversation regarding, frequently asked questions and myths and rumors and stereotypes you may have heard of. But for the time being right now, go to commonapp.org, start filling out your Common App profile. List USC as the school you're planning on applying to. And then you can see the complete USC sets of questions and what it is that you need to do. Don't stress out right now. I think that's my main advice. And I think there's a lot of people that think that that they want to get ahead, so they want to get it in early. And you, just as a heads up, you don't get any extra points for getting it in early. Just take your time on it. It's due November 1st. If you want to be considered for merit-based scholarships, you must select the early action option on the Common App application, and you must submit that application by November 1st. It's a non-restricting, non-committal, non-binding process, meaning that like we don't have any rules on this. It doesn't mean that you're not committing to USC in any particular stretch of the imagination. It just gives us more time to review that application. So application deadline November 1st. Those that are selecting early action, you will be notified of your admission decision or a deferral to the regular decision pool in mid to late January of 2025. If you choose not to apply to be considered for merit-based scholarships, the regular decision deadline is January 15th, and all applicants, whether they applied early action or regular decision, will receive once they've completed their application, a notification of a decision no later than April 1st. So typically in the last week of March is where we go into. There's so much more on our website for you to check out. Please do that. Check that out. We'll be sending more information. If you haven't been receiving mail from USC, or if you're not really certain whether you're on our mailing list, you can always add yourself to it by going to viterbiadmission.usc.edu and click on the contact button on any one of those pages or at the top of the menu. And you can add yourself into our mailing list, and we will be sure to send you more information as we go through. Plus, we have a number of different FAQs and other discussion that's on our website. Please check those out. And if you haven't visited campus and you want to learn more, that is the best way to do so. We have year-round events, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, most Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, I should say. And those run as a great opportunity. It's called our Visit Viterbi Experience. It's an opportunity to learn more about the programs, maybe see a little bit. And during the academic school year, we have real-life current students such as Safia in those sessions with us to help add their perspective and to also help answer your questions about what life is like. So please do that as early as you can. The website to book that and see the registration opportunities is viterbiadmission.usc.edu/visit or /events. You can go to either one. /events probably. Let's go to /events. Let's do that. And if you're a transfer student, that same page also has very specific events, virtual events that are virtual advisement and information sessions specifically for transfer students to learn more about how to become a competitive transfer applicant if you're currently at another university or community college and would like to transfer in this next year. So that's a lot of information. And I think we gave you a pretty long first episode. But Safia, again, welcome. I'm excited to have you here as a co-host and excited to see all the things that we're going to do this year. And for all of you that are listening, if you haven't subscribed, please do so. And if you want to leave us a comment or a question, you can do so inside of the question link inside of the show notes. There's a little link there to send us a text messages, and you may be on our next episode. So with that, thank you very much. We'll be around next week so you can hear us. Bye-bye.